literature. So your mic is actually quite noisy. There it is.
Is it really?
That's much better that you hold it away from your shirt. That's what.
Okay.
So, John, good to meet you. I'm glad to hear that you have been doing some Goenka retreats. Uh, and it's interesting. One of the things that happen with students that have Goenka retreats is that they have a long time between them. But it looks like that you've been able to pack 3 retreats in 5 years, which is going in the right direction for sure. And so you and I have a base to talk about because you're getting ready to go back into another Goenka retreat, so I understand.
Yes.
So, as we had just mentioned, you and I had been talking about that Goenka has a technique, and that Vilamoramsi has a technique, and Yanataro and others have a technique, and that, but I don't have a technique. It doesn't belong to me. That I'm passing down something that I learned. Uh, but it's actually more complete. Basically what you can say is that um, the basic question is the cause and effect. In this regard, that metta is the effect of good practice. It is not the cause or the good practice. It's the result of good practice. And so they've got to cart before the horse in a way. And also issues of noting practice, that noting and then not doing anything about it is going to just leave you noting whatever is there, and you're going to get very good at noting, and you're going to be picking through your own mental garbage forever until you wind up in some dark night of the soul or something. And so there's something missing in that practice. And then there's do nothing practices like choiceless awareness, where the reality is that all along the way, in all of these cases that we've mentioned and a few more, the point about making choice is the issue. That in fact, if we're not making changes and we're not making choices, then we're almost stuck or bound by destiny or whatever to be reborn as the same old thing again and again and again until when are we going to change? When are we going to wake up? Time is now. And so that's basically a lot of what's wrong with the practice in the sense of sati. They don't put the emphasis upon that any moment, any present moment that you have, now is the time to wake up. And so it should be practiced. One of the ways that I say about sati is that we can develop a set of skills, but often when we need those skills the most, we don't apply those skills because we forgot about them. We're too fearful or whatever. And so what's good a skill if you don't remember to use it at the right time? And so this is the value of sati, is to remember when you need to remember to wake up. And basically what that means is to come out of that sixth sense, the mind, which has to do with the past and the future and someplace else, and come into the other 5 senses, which are the here now, to be present. And this is what is the issue about sati. And the point about then what right noble view is to look at what's going on with wisdom, to look and see what's happening. And then the next item on the Eightfold Noble Path is the right effort to change, to do something new. And that means to remove unwholesome thoughts and to put wholesome thoughts in the mind. And there's many suttas that talk about that. Wow, there's just many. One of them is Two Kinds of Thoughts, Sutta number 19 in Majjhima Nikāya. And there it talks about two kinds of thoughts. And it's got a beautiful story that will tell you something. And then in 117, it has it specifically that one's right effort is to remove unwholesome thoughts and replace them with wholesome thoughts. And then in the Ānāpānassatisutta, right next, it talks about the skill of gladdening one's mind, to investigate the mind and then to gladden the mind. Now, this particular point, this right effort, is something that seems to have gotten soft or gone missing in all of the various methods. But it's right there and clear in the text that if we practice correctly, that means that we're waking up and checking what's going on and then climbing the ladder of step 2, which means then that any thought that you're having right now could be improved. Think of it like that. Go around checking, is this thought right now good enough? Is it wholesome? Or can I make a change to it? Start climbing that noble noodle ladder. And this is the way that we begin to change our thoughts, gladden the mind, find things that are more wholesome than what we're thinking about. And generally, if we're thinking about something way over yonder, some big wide world or anything like that, a society or a country or whatever like that, that's far too away. It's not real. If I say the word Ukraine, you'll get an image that's different than the one that I have. And so when we use the word Ukraine and think about Ukraine, that's just merely a mental concept, and we're missing out on what's happening right in front of us. And so this is what sati is, and also the waking up to look at what we're doing, to look at what we've been thinking, and recognizing we can change what we're thinking, including changing it into watching what's going on right around us.
So that's the biggest thing, I guess, right? I mean, among many other things in Goenkas, instead of just looking at it, instead of just looking at it and, looking at the trash, you're not doing anything about it. So I guess what other things it's missing? Because again, I mean, you made it clear that you don't have a technique and you don't want to, or essentially, and there's a reason for that, I'm sure.
I don't want to get blamed for it.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
It goes wrong.
which is fine. So I guess, I mean, you've done Goenka for a long time. So I mean, what is not satisfying for you, and would one be going down the wrong way? Obviously, if they didn't know the Eightfold Path, and what we talked about before, as you mentioned, it's missing the sati, and a lot of the times Goenka doesn't talk about taking long, deep breaths. And the most important thing is to be mindful. And there's this big thing in the West, and you brought this up with strong determination and meaning.
Right effort is the way that I would describe it. I've been waiting for you to list them all, and you didn't.
Okay.
And okay, so that's the point that I would say that all of the systems are generally missing, is the point about the right effort to make a change right now and improve the situation, to come back to the reality instead of lost in space or lost in time.
So that's the biggest thing that was missing, you think? The biggest thing, the right effort.
To literally take control of your own mind. Start looking at what you're doing. And in that process, to literally take control of the breath. This is basically a control issue in a very broad sense of the term, because primarily most people in our society was raised as, starting as a child, we just start off as a victim. We start off as a tender infant that needs to be taken care of. And somehow or another, we really don't get out of that. And we remain a victim. And the practice of Ānāpānassati is actually got more built into it than just the Eightfold Noble Path. But the Eightfold Noble Path kind of starts it off. You could say that the entire beginning stone, or the whole top of the pyramid, is the teaching of dukkha-nirodha. That's the only thing that the Buddha teaches, and everything fits in within that package. And then the next layer down is the Four Noble Truths. And then down on one, the leg of the Eightfold Noble Path, and then another one is the Second Noble Truth, which goes into Paticca Samuppada. And then the Third Noble Truth is what is also built into Ānāpānassati, which is the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path. So all of this stuff kind of sits in layers and fits together. And so with right effort of changing the thoughts from an unwholesome thought to a wholesome thought, we also, with Ānāpānassati, control the breathing by beginning to pay attention mindfully. In fact, the sutta actually says, with sati, he breathes in long, or in the English, we would say, mindfully, he breathes in long, and mindfully, he breathes out long, right? And then that phrase is taken to each one of the other stages, including, and when I say stage or step, I'm not talking about in chronological order of practice. I'm talking about an order of appearance, sort of like a play. These are the way that things appear. And the body is first, and then the feelings, the vedana, and then the chitta. So up at point 9, which is the beginning of the chitta, it's talking about examining the mind. Pay attention to what the mind is doing. Look at the states of mind. Is the mind tired? Is it sharp? Is it focused? Is it dull? Is it watching what's going on? Is it not paying attention? Is it in la-la land? Okay? Or is it in its own hell that it's just created? These are the kinds of states of mind that we have, and we need to look at what kind of state of mind that we've got. And then the next is to gladden that, to pick that up, to make a change. And so this is one's right effort. This is how the Eightfold Noble Path fits into the Ānāpānassati practice that's laid out in the Ānāpānassati Sutta. So mindfully he breathes in long, examining the mind. And mindfully he breathes out long, examining a mind. This is a skill. Thus, one trains oneself. To be able to do that. And then gladdening the mind. Mindfully he breathes in long, gladdening the mind. And mindfully he breathes out long, gladdening the mind. Thus one trains oneself. That's basically quoting right the sutta.
So why were you dissatisfied then?
Dissatisfied in what?
With the Goenka?
Well, Goenka doesn't teach what I'm teaching you now. That's not part of what Goenka says. He says, watch the breath. He does not say mindfully take control of it and then use that control to change, to examine, and to gladden. So he's missing both the control and the gladdening part. Sorry, I didn't put that strong enough so that you caught it.
No, I get it. I get it. It's, since you grew up in the West, I would take it, it seems that's one method where may be more popular than the others. So with obviously Goenka no longer here, do you see that possibly dying out, or is there who could else replace that, or is it just meant to be, because as you mentioned, there is things missing.
Well, the funny thing about the Noble Dhamma is that if you can see it, it becomes self-evident. It's not so cryptic and hidden when it's presented correctly. And for that reason, the Noble Dhamma will get out. In fact, I've already seen that. I've been quite impressed with the changes that Western Buddhism has gone through in the past 20 years, or not 20 years, the past few years, let us say the past five years. In the past 5 years, this whole teaching of joy and gladdening the mind and developing sukha, which is actually part of the Ānāpānassatisutta practice. And that development then is one's right effort. One has to take the effort to develop skills. And the skills that one needs to develop are right there in the Ānāpānassatisutta. And when you develop these skills, each one in its own way brings the mind into the first jhāna, which is the gathering of the factors. So when you have the skill of removing the hindrances from the mind, throwing the unwholesome thoughts out, click number 1, and continuing to do that over and over and over again, and then developing sukha, mindfully he breathes in, developing sukha, mindfully he breathes out, developing sukha, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment. Mindfully breathing in, developing piti, and mindfully he breathes out, developing piti. Doing these things, he's applying the mind to the wholesome and sustaining the mind to the wholesome. While back at step 4 in the body, we were examining and watching the body all of this while, stage 3, which is the scanning method of Goenka gone wild. And then step 4, the real point, is the relaxation of the body. Now, in some of the other suttas, relaxation is included with the 5, making it 6 factors. And in some suttas, it only has 5 factors. But you can see where that extra added and the body's relaxed would be valuable, because that fits in with sukha. Because sukha, actually defined is, in the Pali dictionaries, is comfort that is preceded by a feeling of safety and security. Safe and secure, we sit and feel comfortable. And as we sit and feel comfortable, we begin to feel satisfied, partly because we're talking ourselves into it with the gladdening of the mind and having wholesome thoughts about sitting here and saying, my, how nice it is. I got no place to go and nothing to do, and the bell is going to be yet an hour away, and I don't have to worry about that at all, because I'm having fun here, just being satisfied with doing nothing. And so this is the development of the sukha, and pretty soon you begin to feel satisfied. Wow, it really is great to have nothing to do and no place to go. This is what the whole idea of retreat is all about, and somehow or another, people get wrapped up in work. Have you ever heard that from Goenka? Work.
And you mentioned something too, that the lazy, I don't know, please, if I'm not saying this right, the Western mind, you could say, essentially thinks, or is lazy, or how would I want to put this? A lazy way would be Western mind to work, whereas I guess you could say in some Eastern countries, like currently here in Nepal, they're just, it seems a little more relaxed, where, the West is a total different lifestyle in the sense of just constantly work, where there's no, is that something that you mentioned?
Yes, this is the whole point about the question of what is right effort. because most of the time people are putting in either not enough or too much effort. Basically, we're putting in too much effort for too long, get tired, and then we stop putting any effort into it at all. We quit because we're exhausted. Rather than putting in the right effort, and if the right effort is the right effort, it will continually perk up the mind, to gladden the mind, to bring the mind out of the hindrances into the noble light of the day, to see what's going on. And so with that and tying it together with the breath, now we're beginning to do two control things that we've never done before. One is that we're learning to control the mind and its contents and its state. And the other one is we're beginning to control the body in the sense of making the body alive and awake, just like Goenka practices. To become in touch with the body, to see what the body is, and to notice where the tensions are and relax them so that you can, in fact, become relaxed. To where a lot of students wind up with back pain and butt pain and knee pain and all kinds of stuff. And that is truly and clearly not relaxed and not comfortable, and therefore not conducive to bring the unwholesome thoughts about such pains and misery and I want out of here and wanting things. And they're not satisfied. And so we have to practice in a way that our body remains comfortable and relaxed. That's what this practice is. So all of these ideas of work and all of that kind of stuff has to do, yes, that's correct. He's referring to right effort. I'm sure that he was, but I didn't understand it that way. I understood it the Western way instead, which is actually the word struggle or strive instead of persist.
Correct.
Okay, great, you got it. Now we're cooking. That's the point. As we keep going, it's repetitive. It's over and over. Mindful in this moment. Mindful in this moment. Mindful in this breath. Mindful to throw that thought out. Mindful to throw it out again. Mindful to when it comes back a third time, we don't have a fourth thought of, oh no, here it's back again. We just throw that thought out and come back to, oh wow, isn't it so nice that I don't have any problems at all. Cause any problem that comes to mind, I throw it out and come back to the present moment. Because right now you don't have any problems. The room you're in is very safe. So why do we keep having thoughts of things that are fearful? All the dangers, all the problems, all the possibilities it could be, instead of recognizing that right now we don't have to deal with any of that stuff. And there you're going into retreat with literally nothing to do and no place to go. And so take a break with right noble effort rather than a struggle of trying to strive and get something.
So I hate to put people in categories, but why would some people find, the technique of Vipassana so hard while others enjoy it? I don't know if that.
Have you ever heard of, it's actually referred to as the 16 stages of insight that is often waved around by people who are into Mahāsaccakasutta. And it comes out of the Sutta and has roots in Buddhism. You know that 16 stages?
I heard you and Daniel Ingram talk a little bit about it, but you could fill me in, please.
All right. The reason that I'm mentioning it is that there comes a point after that sequence of events that is referred to in the U.S. and other Western culture of a dark night of the soul, because there's no soul at all, because actually it's a redoubling of the effort, which means now the click is that the student decides he's going to have to practice correctly from now on because what he's been doing has been wrong. This is the Great Awakening. The question is, why can't we teach that directly, that you've got to make some changes here? You can't practice the way that you've been practicing. You're going to have to make a change. And what is that change? Guess what? That's step 11. And step 12 is the Eightfold Noble Path again, the Four Noble Truths. And so that's where I want to start the students, is at step 12 of this thing, rather than, whatever dark nights have already had. That's sufficient. We've had that enough. Let's stop doing that now and start practicing correctly, because the actual teachings of the Buddha, as you probably heard, is referred to as good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Have you heard that? Then where is the dark night of the soul in that?
And what are you actually referring to, dark night of the soul?
I'm referring to steps 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 of the 16 stages of insight, brought to you to the West by Mahāsi's students. Step 6, fear, misery, disgust, despair, anguish, and a strong desire to get out of that. Followed by the point that I made, which was then a redoubling of effort to get it right this time. But some people have to hit rock bottom before they turn around. That's in fact quite well known in AA. Court-ordered AAs don't generally work. But when somebody hits the point to where they know that they're hurting themselves with what they've been doing, they're willing to make a change.
Would you say you hit rock bottom before you had to make a change?
No, that's the whole point. It depends upon what it got. I mean, things get rocky, sure.
Right.
But it wasn't anywhere near anything that I would consider rock bottom. No, I've been able to cruise at quite an altitude my whole life. But before I would soar, and now I can soar. So, no, but that's what happens, is people generally have to come to a point that they do see that what they're doing isn't working, and they've got to make a change. And that's what wound me up in Asia. That's what wound me up in psychology.
Yeah, so how did you really get into meditation and kind of leave America and then go into Asia and India?
In Ann Arbor, Michigan, there was an ashram that was visited frequently by Muktananda, a Swami from Ganeshpuri, India. And so I followed him over back to India. And at that time, I was professoring at a university and had plenty of time off. So I would spend 4 months a year in India for several years, and then wound up staying.
And so what made that switch? Said, I'm done teaching. I mean, it's time to, do something else. I mean, that's not everyone's going to go ahead and leave their comfortable, job that's paying and go and do what you did.
That's the point. Is it really that comfortable? Or is it the fear or the terror that prevents them? So when does the terror and the pain get balanced to the point that somebody says, I've got to make a change here? Do they have to hit rock bottom? Or they have to be just mildly dissatisfied and pretty smart about it and go do something about it?
This is a good point. It's a frame of mind of looking at it.
Pardon?
I said it's all in the mind of how you look at it. I mean, yeah, I get it. So I guess when you went, you did 2 years with Goenka, and you traveled around. You said you met many charlatans, as you say, that just weren't um, who they say they were.
Weren't convincing enough.
Sure, fair enough. And then you went to Achan Goenka. So, and then you went to Bhikkhu Buddhadāsa, and something about him kind of set off for you. You said something about his retreat was harder than others, and you spent some time.
No, the hardest retreat I ever did was with Pandita, who was a student of Mahasi. That was the hardest one. No,
Why so?
Pardon?
Why was that so hard?
Number one, I would say offhand, we didn't connect. But number two, any teaching that he did had to go from Burmese into Chinese. And in the public talks, every talk went for 2 or more hours because he would speak in Burmese and it would be translated into Chinese. But in the private sessions, nobody had any common language. But we all pretended. But I had already been to Wat Suan Mok by then. And so that's actually what did it for me. But I turned my bicycle around and I hopped back out of Malaysia right back to Wat Suan Mok. Didn't leave for a while.
What did you get out of that? And how long were you there for?
In Malaysia at the Penang retreat.
No, Wat Suan Mok or whatever you said.
Wat Suan Mok. That's the home of Bhikkhu Buddhadāsa.
Okay. So he was your overall, I guess, main. I mean, you had many teachers, but he was your main, you could say, teacher. That you felt the most closest to, or no?
I would say that it was a twin situation between he and Achan Po. Achan Po was the abbot of Wat Suan Mok. And that while Bhikkhu Buddhadāsa was, let us say, devoted to the Thai culture, the Thai people, and getting the actual Dhamma out to the public, as well as gaining many, many noble friends along the way from many different quarters, including all of the top Wats. But Achan Po was the one who was actually more interested in the Purana, the Westerners. So that was mostly my relationship. Basically, Bhikkhu Buddhadāsa was by appointment only, and Achan Po kept the appointment calendar.
So when we talk about, I guess, a concentrated mind versus unified mind, and the beginning of this topic was starting off with Vipassana, and I guess one downfall of me and my ignorance is just not you could say 100% trusting that technique, because so many people that have long experiences time with that technique were not satisfied. So I guess, could you talk a little bit about a concentrated mind versus unified mind? And I guess we could start there.
The unification of mind that's mentioned in the Eightfold Noble Path, that is often and in English referred to as right noble concentration. As far as I know about the word concentration, it misses the point, especially since if the guys who had done the translation had bothered to read more carefully, words like unification is associated with that. In fact, in Sutta number 117 in the Great 40, the Buddha talks about, "O monks, listen, and I will give you right, noble unification of mind with its supports and requisites." And that word unification was then translated into samadhi, because actually what the word samadhi means is gathering things together, or like the gable point at the top of a house, or an arch has an arch stone, or that a teepee has all the tent poles tied together at one point. That's a samadhi point. That's also what we mean by the samadhi of meditation called jhāna. It basically means not a concentrated mind, but it means gathering together the factors of first jhāna. And when the factors of first jhāna are gathered together, the mind is unified, because it's applying intensely, not intensely, but intentionally, and sustaining it intentionally. And what are we sustaining? Wholesome thoughts. One wholesome thought after another wholesome thought. One Dhamma thought after another. Dhamma is actually a good, wholesome topic to talk about. If you and I start talking about politics, one or the other of us are going to start talking about some unwholesome stuff. So, keeping the mind wholesome, intentionally so. This is what we mean by the first jhana. And when we add the other features like safe, sound, comfortable, secure, and satisfied, now we have the extra ingredient of sukha. And sukha, safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied, is exactly opposite of the word dukkha. It's exactly opposite in Pali. It's exactly opposite in Thai language, part of the Thai language. Is also, um, it's more of a surprise in Thai than it is in Gujarati, because Gujarati is a language, and I do know that. I've got a student whose parents speak Gujarati in the house, and they're using duk and suk, actually duki and suki, on a regular basis as opposites. So knowing that, we can say, wait a minute, if we can put all of this kind of stuff together from Sutta number 36, where the Buddha says is that indeed the first jhana is the path to enlightenment. Why was I afraid of the pleasures of first jhana? Because they're not sensual. That's the way. Okay, why is that? It's because when we are, in fact, the noble quest that the Buddha was on is the removal of dukkha, and here he's reflecting upon that first jhana's got that sukha. Let's get into a state of sukha. And when we get into that state, and it's done with the Eightfold Noble Path point of right noble waking up, right noble paying attention to what's going on, and right noble changing effort to make a change, to make our thoughts wholesome. And we're constantly doing that over and over and over again. And then that feeling of safety and security, especially if our wholesome thoughts are, everything is okay, there's no problem, there are no gorillas, there are no boogeyman, there's no work to do and no place to go and nothing to do. And so we begin to feel safe and secure and comfortable and satisfied, and everything is okay. But if we want something like enlightenment, if we want the bell to ring, now we're in a state of dukkha, because we want something we don't have. And so we have to remain free of those hindering thoughts of wanting something that we don't have, something of the past, something of the future, something that's not right here, right now, or something annoying. These are the hindrances. Another one would be doubt. What the heck am I doing here? And I could be out on my bicycle. Those are the kind of thoughts that we have that prevent us from actually enjoying what we're doing right here, right now.
Mm.
Okay, so let's say that now we get this thing on a roll and it becomes a snowball and then an avalanche. And where the avalanche comes in is now the fourth item on the Eightfold Noble Path, and that is Samma Sankappa. Samma Sankappa is referred to, the wrong translation is thought, but you've also seen it in translated as right noble intention. Okay. There's another way of looking at it so that we begin to understand what is the Samma Sankappa, right noble attitude, right noble leaning. When I say attitude, we can either have this attitude of straight up, or we can have this attitude. In which direction am I going to fall? If I'm leaning in that direction, I'm going to fall in that direction. If I'm not leaning, I'm not going to fall. Okay, so which way does the mind lean? If it is leaning in the direction of, oh no, something could go wrong, then guess what? Something will go wrong. And so those are the way that we begin to see that the attitude that we have, and what the attitude that we're now actually intentionally developing as we're breathing in, we develop piti. What that means is that we're changing our attitude from the attitude of a loser into the attitude of a winner. I can do this. I can clean out the mind. Look at it, one wholesome thought after another, yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay, and now that elation is added to it in the sense of being a champion. The kind of feeling that the crowd buys very expensive tickets to a big expensive football game. Why? Is because when the guy runs down the field and makes a touchdown, what is the first thing he do? He cheers in the air, yay! Why does he do that? Celebration. Guess what? Everybody in the stands on his side, they do the same thing. That's why people go to the game, is for that thrill of success. And so here we're beginning to see I'm getting successful in my meditation. That's the Samma Sankappa. I can do it. We've got success. This stuff works. And it works at a really deep level, because not only does it work, whoever I was is no longer that. Something new is happening. A lion is born, change of lineage. The winner, the strong one, real strength based in wisdom comes up. This is that piti. And a lot of people don't quite understand it. They think it's magical or mystical or all.
You put that very well. I got that. You nailed the head on the hammer. Nail, I should say. Wow. So, I mean, practicing everything you said in these techniques, is it possible to purify the mind where you don't have any desire or lust for anything?
Oh, you're in a time frame. That's the clock you're in. You've got a measurement of time. The answer is that right now, the answer is yes. And if you can do it this time, you can do it again. Get out of the future and stay in the present moment. Culture.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't worry about long-term purification. Get it going right now. Because now will be the skill that you're developing that'll help that skill be there in the future for you if you can remember. So develop remembering too. And that's why we practice. This is the whole point of practice, the whole idea of getting into seclusion so we can only deal with our own issues and clean out the mind of all of these hindrances. And the second thing that we begin to do also is begin to make friends with all the dark corners. That we become friends with ourselves. We change our rule systems. This is what is referred to as Sila Bhatta Paramasa, which is the second fetter of stop expecting things from yourself and relax and nourish yourself instead.
I have so much work to do.
Pardon?
So ignorant to so many things. I'm so ignorant to so many things, but it's okay.
No, that's the whole point. Look at what you're doing right now. You're saying, oh, poor me, I'm ignorant of all of this stuff. No, you're not. You just heard it. Wake up and say, I'm glad you told me that. Caught you again.
Yeah.
That's sati. That's the wake up and look at what you're doing. That you can change that right now when you catch it. And when you do, catch it joyfully. Aha, make a game out of it. This is fun.
Sure.
Or you can do it the misery way, up to you. And so, in a way, this is the practice that develops the metta that you can have for your own inner being, whatever that is. Because it ain't being, it's moving. So everything is a moving target. Nothing is what it used to be. So we got to keep watching. Everything's a moving target. Often these targets are colliding with each other. That's funny. Everything's a target for another target.
It just keeps going.
A lot of collisions happen that way. Sometimes they get really piled up, like on a freeway. So, this is the way of practicing the Ānāpānassatisutta that is based upon the Eightfold Noble Path. It's based upon back dukkha, dukkha-nirodha. And dukkha-nirodha is often understood by Westerners the way that we get everything else, and that is delayed gratification. You go to first grade, you learn ABCs. Why do I have to learn the ABCs? Not because I can have a chocolate ice cream right now, it's so I can learn to read. Well, why should I learn to read? So that you can become smart. So why should I want to be smart? And on and on and on it goes with delayed gratification. And so when we approach Buddhism, we see that it's delayed gratification, just like Christianity, that's delayed gratification. You got to work like hell to avoid hell. When you die, everything is delayed gratification. So this practice is not delayed gratification. This practice is get your benefits right now. Dukkha, dukkha-nirodha. Hop right out of that dukkha step 1, first noble truth, into step 3 noble truth. Just step right over. Your choice. Jump that hurdle of all of the causations and land happily. You can be in a third noble truth anytime you want to. All you have to do is remember. Because we got a method. What is our method? To remember. To look at what you're doing. And to make a change. Then congratulate yourself for it.
Can you recommend any books for sutra references, and then we could dig a little deeper for ourselves? Or
I have been mentioning several today. Number 117, 118. Also, you see which ones. No, I left that one out. All right. I haven't really talked so much about the hindrances, only a little bit. You can look also at Sutra number 2, the first part of it, the Sabbāsavasutta.
So what about actually like any books themselves, if any?
I would recommend Bhikkhu Buddhadāsa. There's a lot of stuff that's translated into English. All you have to do is Google Buddhadāsa and you can find many things. ABC of Buddhism and Handbook to Mankind would be two that I would recommend.
Okay. You talked a little bit about this before, that you've seen many people, were like, oh, I'm just going to renounce, and it's just a mess. Everything from the culture to the food. That some people are like, oh, I'm just going to go to Thailand, India, and do this thing. So, do you see that happen more often than not, I guess? And I guess could you talk a little bit about not only that, but how you kind of made up your mind that you were just going to teach a Dhamma and, do nothing else? I mean, what inner insight, I guess, that you felt that, I don't know.
Well, you got a lot of questions in there. Can you pare it down and get down to like one question at a time?
Okay, we'll just talk about you then, I guess. That'll be a good question we can go to.
That's not. I'm not.
I noticed you don't really like that at all. You don't like to ask questions particularly about you.
Yeah, there's nothing to it.
I feel like there's something we can gain out of it.
No, there's actually, the point is that what value can you receive from this? And life stories don't help.
Mm.
That what you really want to know is, how can you practice correctly? And I've just told you that. And so if you do it right now, you wouldn't be asking stupid questions.
Mm.
Though I must admit that I'm also still curious about many of the early things that happened in Bhikkhu Buddhadāsa's life, but I know that I wouldn't go to him to pester him about it because he's been dead for 30 years.
Mm. Fair enough. You still there? Oh, okay. You went out a little bit.
I said James is good at dragging old stories out of people.
Mm.
But his role is different. He's an interviewer, and so I give him that. But mostly, there's nothing to talk about.
Mm. So if you say.
Pardon?
I said, okay.
Yeah, don't do what I did.
Mm.
Okay, go find your own friggin' path and take the Eightfold Noble Path along as a map to do it.
Fair enough. That's all I needed to know.
That actually happened with the Buddha. We still have many of the Westerners trying, with very little success, to duplicate what the Buddha did himself before he was enlightened, rather than doing what he suggested after he figured it all out. I think that we're like that even with our own family, our daddies. We would rather do as my daddy does than listen to what my daddy says.
Mm. This is a very good point.
Yeah, monkey see,
Monkey see, monkey do. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's particularly why you don't talk about your personal, because that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Old past stories. So what I can give you is joy, enthusiasm, eagerness for the Dhamma, delight in being alive, and a chuckle or two from some of my outlandish jokes. And sometimes I'll set them up for 5 minutes, just waiting to get around to the punchline.
Mhm.
But it's all about the Dhamma, which means basically the word Dhamma can mean actually anything and everything. And when you see the Dhamma in that way of dukkha-nirodha about everything, then you recognize, hey, everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. There's nothing much to do about it. Whether the world is absolutely whatever the world is absolutely full of shit or an absolute paradise, one way or the other, you can't do much of anything about it, but choose how you feel.
Mm.
Looks like you chose the right one that time.
Yeah.
Rather than the other side of it, oh, I don't know if I can do that.
Mm.
So every moment we have a choice. That's why we want to wake up to and be in the present moment, rather than locked in our old habits of the past, which are the hindrances to prevent us from being in the present moment. I mean, that's the Dhamma of the Buddha is so succinct. Everything fits together so precisely. And yet the way that we see it is that it's a list of things. There's 6 of these and 5 of those and 4 of them and 3 of that and 4 more of those things and 5 of this. Gosh, we got a lot of 5s. And we got 7s and we got 8s and we got 12s and we got 16s and we got 32s and we got 108s. I mean, what a list of stuff, right? But all of those are kind of memory anchors of the various things that are just in this one little point. Dukkha-nirodha in this moment. What a choice.
Fair enough. Well, I appreciate this talk very much. I'll even have to go back through it.
All right. When are you going to do your retreat?
Next month, so at the beginning of the month.
Oh, well, you have lots of time of practice before you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can get ready for that, Joker. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you might want to give me a call between now and the time that you go to the retreat then.
Okay.
So go practice the way that I haven't told you where to sit, where to go, when to sit, or any of that kind of stuff, but I do recommend seclusion to practice these things, just to remove those hindrances as soon as you catch them, and to be on guard for it.
Mm.
That's the correct practice, and you can see that that's built right in there, but why isn't that emphasized by all of the main teachers?
It's a good point, and that's maybe why the reason you don't have, or that's why you stay away from that. Specifically saying that, and I get it, which is probably the wise move to do, because if it, because then someone could push the blame on you. Oh, this is, so I think you kind of been there, done that, like you say, and that's why you don't do that, which is wise. It makes sense. I get it.
All right, John. Well, we'll see you soon.
Fair enough. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.